Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and the past few weeks have been overwhelming when it comes to the amount of news and updates that we've gotten when it comes to World of Warcraft, specifically when it comes to the expansion of the War Within and its bright future heading into the year 2025, with the Warcraft Direct and following interviews giving us a glimpse at some of the different features and content that's arriving in the next year's update, and there's a lot to go over. And on this channel, we try to highlight all of the big stuff, from the player housing that's coming out in the expansion of Midnight to the Undermined update of 11.1. But there's a lot of smaller little features that have been missed out over these past few weeks, however, that I feel like not as many players are talking about, that I think are worth highlighting. And I think I want to really put those features together in one single video, go over why they're important and why you should really be excited about these features, as they could be pretty major for the War Within expansion. As always, if you guys want to see more regular War Within updates like these on the channel, be sure to follow and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Now, one of the smaller features that's actually arriving very soon with 11.07 that I don't think enough people are talking about, though we did cover it on the channel, is the racial rebalancing that's arriving with a 0.7 update, which primarily brings just a bunch of quality of life improvements when it comes to customizing your character, picking different racials, or potentially leveling up new alts, which is pretty easy to do right now in 11.05, but also going to be pretty easy with the turbulent timeways arriving with 11.07. Now, a majority of the rebalancing comes to a variety of different racials that are not seeing nearly as much play, and some of them look really good, like the Maghar, which are getting a Giga stat buff, which gets a lot more control, getting basically the power that of a unused trinket just as a racial bonus. Even the Void Elves for the Alliance are getting a fairly decent buff, with the Rift that travels much quicker, but also 5% more damage as a proc, especially inside of your major cooldowns, could be absolutely astronomical. Then we also have the 80% slow for the Velpera and the Nightborn, which with an 80% slow, which is very similar to that of almost like a Root Lyric effect, which seems like that's going to be a pretty significant addition. And even the Worgen speed buff now stacks with other effects, which may seem like a very small addition, but that means more mobility for every playstyle option. And in most cases, mobility can be massive for a variety of classes, since it lets you get around places a little bit quicker, and mobility can be even some of the best defensive option in a variety of endgame content, which is also huge. But even some of the other options, such as the Draenei in particular, with their racial, getting some nice new bonuses like a giga juiced up version of Light's Judgment, which does significantly more damage, but even a healing bonus for Holy Providence, which I think is the first time we've seen a racial that is focused on better healing output, which could be kind of nice. In most cases, though, the differences between majority of racials are generally small, and players are advised in most cases to play what you like, but certain racials can be a lot stronger in very specific situations. And all of these newest racial revamps should make all of those racials perform much better in those specific niche encounters, which should hopefully bring a little bit more balancing and variety for majority forms of endgame progression. Now, another lesser talk feature that we actually have on the roadmap is the Warband UI update plus camp collections. The Warband camp is an awesome addition, and the Warband feature in general is one of my favorite parts of the War Within, but also World Soul Saga, and I am personally excited and invested to see how this feature evolves going forward. But being able to see all your characters around the campfire in your warband, and being able to customize them with shaman totems and even hunter pets, change your positions, all of those things are really cool to see, just to see some of your favorite characters all around the campfire standing about with all of the transmogs on full display. The War Within teaser initially showed off another screen for Warband, more of a mock-up than anything, but it does show that there's potentially could be a possibility of future screens such as these for your Warbands with different backgrounds and even potentially different loadouts of your character's favorites features. And they do have that as a updated feature for the camp collections planned for the 11.1. With more warband options and customizations, at least that's what we can kind of assume, so they don't have too much information, but they did mention that they wanted to expand on the system and give more character customization, even on little things such as the warband screen, which is something that hopefully will be dropping very soon, or at least hopefully we'll be able to see what it looks like over on the PTR. But also there's questions of how you'll be able to get all of these different customizations. Some players assume it's just going to be different backgrounds and different campsites, while others assume it's actually going going to be little customization options like being able to change out the tent in the background, being able to change out what kind of a campfire you have. Do you want a simple campfire or like a massive cooking pot in between of it for, let's say, if one of your characters does cooking or something, and potentially different animations for your characters. Maybe instead of just standing around or sitting, they could be casting some spells or checking the map or anything like that. So there's a lot of opportunity for them to add even more customizability for the warband menu. Now, another feature coming out in future updates, which was very surprising for a lot of players, is Horrific Visions Revisited, which is a reintroduction of the Battle for Azeroth unique scenario, originally used as part of this Legendary Cloak catch-up mechanic where you go into an alternate version of Stormwind or Orgrimmar, fighting a bunch of different elite enemies, bosses, delving further into the visions, into some of the more harsher areas that drain your insanity over time, and you kind of want to clear up as much of this zone of these visions as you can, delving further into more dangerous areas and then making your way back to the boss before your insanity runs out. But the further you delve in these visions, the harder the boss would have, so it has its own like replayability mechanic, but they're bringing it back as like a relevant thematic experience of the expansion of Battle for Azeroth, which dealt with the N'Zoth as well as the old gods and the Void, and no better place to reintroduce this feature in a Void themed expansion between War Within and Xal'atath, but also the upcoming Midnight expansion afterwards. And one of the best things about bringing this feature back, however, is an opportunity for players that may have not played in BFA, or may have done it but never really explored it fully, to go back and get a variety of different rewards and cosmetics, from a weapon illusion of Void Edge, which is a chance to drop from scenario chest piece, or potentially a Black Dragon scale back piece cosmetic from one of the vendors. There's 5 faceless masks as transmog that earn from completing challenge mode versions of visions, 3 mounts you collect from Horrific Visions like the Black Serpent of N'Zoth from an achievement, the Mail Muncher as a random drop from mailboxes, as well as the Wicked Swarmer from the vendor, a variety of different pets like Reek, Anomalous, and Void Scarf versions of familiar pets, but also a bunch of different toys. So it makes sense for them to bring back some kind of like a Void themed feature and activity into a Void themed expansion, as well as the World Soul Saga, but also an opportunity for them to make a feature or a piece of content that they created a while ago a little bit more accessible and give it a little bit more playability, because Blizzard has done this a lot with previous expansions where they add new content, they add new features, and then as we move on to the next expansion, all of the old content is completely abandoned and just kind of becomes useless and you can't really interact with it at all. They started to change the tune on that during the middle of Shadowlands, where they brought back Legion Time Walking with the Legion Mage Tower, and they even filled the Mage Tower with new types of loot as a content or piece of content that you can now access at any moment, no matter which expansion you're currently playing in. So it seems like they're trying to do something similar to make sure that old content is not completely abandoned, but something that can be revisited for players to go back and get some of the cosmetics if you potentially skipped out on it or missed out on it for one reason or another, which I think is a good thing going forward for us to be able to restore some of the previously created content that was functional all on its own. Next, there's a smaller feature when it comes to the Plunderstorm, which is by itself, as a feature, as a piece of content, not small by any measure. Plunderstorm was huge when it initially released, and the fact that it was available for a limited time also kind of just makes people wonder if that is something that could become part of an evergreen feature that players could just queue into at any moment whenever they wanted to. For now, though, Plunderstorm is making a return also in a limited capacity, and will be available for short better time for players to queue into a Battle Royale mode for World of Warcraft that many players that are big fans of PvP, but also those that are interested in PvP but never really got too deep into the in-depth system of rated arenas, did actually enjoy Plunderstorm by quite a bit and was very well perceived by the community. However, what players didn't like back then was a big renown track that it took a while to grind through with the Plunder and the Plunderstorm system, as you basically had to go in, queue games of Plunderstorm, collect plunder, and plunder would convert into experience, or rather reputation experience, with the faction of Plunderstorm, which is how you unlock all of those little goodies. This time, however, when Plunderstorm returns, they're changing up the way you earn those rewards through a plunder store instead, and that's what I really wanted to highlight today. The fact that there's going to be a different way to acquire all of those goodies by participating in Plunderstorm. You will still need to complete matches of Plunderstorm, queuing up either as a solo, duo, trio, however many players you want to combine in a group together, but you'll be able to play out games of Plunderstorm collect that plunder, and then spend that plunder separately to a separate vendor or in a plunder store. Not exactly sure how they're going to implement it, since it's not something we can really test right now over on the patch 1107 PTR as of this moment. But you'll be able to directly buy all of the unique items and all of the most sought after items from the plunder store during the plunder storm event. So you can skip out the fluff and buy all the best stuff like the mounts as well as all the best transmog, and it looks like you might even be able to purchase trading post currency on that plunder store as well, which makes you wonder if that type of currency is going to be something that's farmable or a one-time purchase. If it is farmable, I think the plunder storm could be a massive event for players to ransack it for as much trading post currency as possible for months and months to come for all of the other plunder storm goodies, amounts, and other rewards. But again, time will tell exactly how that will end up functioning. My guess is maybe not farmable, but I think if they did make it farmable, it would be a massive experience with so many players grinding out as much of this currency as humanly possible. Now, another smaller feature, part of the 11.1 update that still we don't have too much information on, not for the lack of trying, but rather because we're waiting still for the 11.1 PTR, is the new d.r.i.v.e, the vehicle mount movement system coming out with the Undermine update. Essentially, it's like skywriting with its own movement and abilities and some kind of a recharge bar, but for ground mounts specifically. And it will be primarily utilized within the zone of Undermine, as the zone is essentially designed for primarily ground movement and transportation over skywriting. Well, skywriting isn't completely going to be gone out of 11.1, as there will be some certain areas, especially when it comes to endgame activities, where you still will be able to fly around. But within the zone of Undermine specifically, it was designed from the ground up as a area where you wanted to traverse on your ground mounts specifically. So at the very least, they took into account the design, the size of the zone, and just how far you'll be able to get around just through ground movement on its own. While not a lot of info has been announced regarding the new hot rod mount that we'll be able to customize within the Undermine area, we do know some info about it, like it'll be able to move 4 to 5 times faster than a normal ground mount, which does mean quite a significant bit of additional movement speed that most players are used to. No detailed customization like skywriting mounts when it comes to the appearance specifically, but instead of customizing the mount's appearance, you'll actually be customizing the mechanical components of that mount instead. You will be able to swap out the paint job, for instance, so you'll be able to paint the mount in a variety of different ways, but where a lot of the customization will come from is changing the actual moving components of the vehicle, like the handling if you want better grip on the road, or if you want to have a bit more drift as you skirt your way around the turns. You will be able to do engine swaps for either better acceleration or potentially reaching the highest top speeds available to better customize your experience when it comes to traversal and movement. You'll be able to change out some of the different boost components, and potentially there will be even kind of like a chaotic boost system that you can apply, or something that's a little bit more stable and a little bit more predictable. And you might even have potentially possible companions that you can add into your vehicle for some additional customizability and even functionality uses. So the vehicle itself will be customized in a very, very different way, and a huge portion of these customizations from the interiors we've been able to see so far will be acquired from the Goblin cartels, 4 of them, that you'll be able to progress through different renown tracks and reputation bonuses once 11.1 officially launches. Now, the car system is essentially built specifically for the experience that is the Undermine zone. So it isn't something that's initially meant to be utilized outside of the zone initially, but very, very similar to how skywriting was initially used only within the Dragon Isles and only on the back of your dragon mount. It was a system that was beloved by the community, and the amount of flying and the movement and the freedom that came with it is so much more fun than the normal flying. And if the system is successful, very similar to skywriting, and if the community is very receptive to it, like if they actually prefer it over normal ground mounts, then it will likely end up influencing their decisions for the mount going forward. So if this new drive system functionality works a lot better and players are very receptive to it, then it's very likely it will influence how the rest of our ground mounts will be functioning in the rest of the open world of Azeroth. But as always though, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very, very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community if you want to keep up with all the future War Within updates. Also, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, which of these features you think is going to be your favorite. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.